I would like to talk about democracy and the problems that democracy has in today's world. I think that since democracy has been one of the central problems of today's world, one of the aspects that is missing in the democratic theory and in democratic thought today is that we are losing the democratic passion around the world. Citizens around the world, in Europe, in North America, in new democracies, they go and they vote, but most of them in the younger generation, they don't have this democratic passion, and the lack of democratic passion is linked to I think, a failure in democratic theory. The question that we can ask, what is really missing in the democratic theory, is that I think we have arrived at a state that democratic theory, especially European democratic theory, Western democratic theory, needs to bring in non-Western perspectives of democracy also. Now, non-Western, what do we mean by non-Western perspectives of democratic theory? For example, in my own work on Gandhi, Gandhi's critique of liberalism could be very useful to get to new perspective of democracy in today's world. The fact that Gandhi talks about being democratic or having a democracy as a self-institution, how people give themselves the laws, how can they change the laws, how can they have a self-rule, but at the same time, how can they bring ethics into politics, which is completely missing in our world. I mean, maybe the last political leaders who talked about that were Václav Havel and Mandela, the two, I would say, reformers in politics in 20th century who changed their countries, but they also understood that politics cannot go without ethics. Now, this process of ethicalization of politics, which is very important, I think, for our republicanism, for our pluralism, for the life of democracy in the future, I think it cannot it cannot live without the intercultural perspective, meaning that cultures need to feed from each other, they have to open up towards each other, but the construction of democracy is something which is going to happen globally and not necessarily only in a culturally limited frontiers and borders. We need to feed from each other. So in this interculturality, I think, is the element which can end the civil strife around the world, but it also can help us to cross borders, to bring in new theories, like, for example, in the case of India and Gandhi, could be non-violence, how democracy needs to tame violence in today's world, because we see practically everywhere around the world that democracies, European democracies, North American democracies, they create violence, but also at the same time, they are so weak to stop violence. And not only they create violence, but they cannot tame violence. So we need actually new elements of this taming of violence, I would say, in our democracies. And this is where I think that I mention it in my work as a democratic evil, if we can talk about the democratic evil. Democratic evil is when democracy turns against itself by making the citizens dispassionate, by ending any form of civic friendship among the citizens, by creating spaces of resentment and vengeance and revenge. What is most important is that we try to take into consideration the intercultural cross-bordering perspective, the idea of democratic passion, the education of citizens, the civic education, and finally non-violence or non-violent action in democracies as a very important factor for the survival of democracies.